So welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be working on my son's JKU. We had a trip a couple weeks ago to the Rubicon with the Jeepers Jamboree and got through the whole trip with no issues that we knew of. Now it's been about 8 weeks or so after the fact, and I got a call a couple days ago from my son saying that he had some kind of issue. He sent me a video, and his video showed this. The upper control arm on the rear axle has broken the welds on the stock mount. So we are going to fix that. We ordered a new bracket from Barnes, and we'll get this all prepped and ready to go and weld the new brackets on and make them a little beefier than what's on there now so that we don't have this issue again. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoy the video. This is the top of the axle. These are the welds right here that broke. There, and over here. In looking at the welds, it looks like there was not a really good weld and penetration on this backside here. None of this ripped off of the mount. It just left the bead sitting here with the exception of this one little nodule. And then over on the edge of the axle here, the same thing where you can see that rust was getting in between here. There was no good penetration onto the bracket from the manufacturer, with the exception of this back corner, which was about a little over ½ an inch long. The rest of it just fell right off and slid off. And if you look at the bracket, there's no damage to the bracket whatsoever. Just, it didn't penetrate both the axle and the bracket. This side of the bracket, however, penetrated very well because all of this is bracket, where it actually cracked over time and ripped off from flexing the back end, and the welds are on the back side of it and they're all still intact. So it was the actual bracket that ripped off on this side of the bracket, but the other sides were just the welds that popped, which is unfortunate because it came from Jeep that way. But at least now when we're finished with it, it will be a much beefier bracket that's on there, and we won't have to worry about it again. Here's the edge of the bracket that I was just explaining. You can see that on this side over here, we had about ½ an inch of grab from the weld, and the rest of this just didn't grab onto it at all. And it was basically just sitting on the axle. And then on the back side here, this is where all of this is where it ripped off and was left on the axle tube. And you can see that it was penetrating. It just finally broke and ripped that section off. And then this is the front part of it, or the back part of it, where it was just this one little nodule and the rest of the weld just slid right off of the bracket. But we'll get it fixed up and he'll be good to go. Don't accidentally grind it or cut it, so it's just pushed back out of the way. As well as the ABS wire I've pushed out of the way. So hopefully we can get to these 3 locations either with a grinder or with a small belt sander, so that we can clean those up to where we can get down to the steel. So let's get started and see how that goes. Okay, that looks like we got all the welds ground down pretty easily. It took about 15-20 minutes. Actually, probably took about 20-25 minutes. And now we're just going to be ready to fit the bracket, the new bracket, onto it and tack it in place, make sure everything lines up, and then we can go ahead and weld it in place. Looks like I might have hit the bolt a couple times, so I probably need to fix those threads. And other than that, we just need to clean it up and we'll be ready to go. Next, we're going to mock up the new bracket and remove the old bracket from the upper control arm. So we'll do that first, and then we can mark up the new bracket and tack weld it in place. So we're gonna pop that down, bring it out to where I can get to it with my impact gun and hit it. Use that nut. Let's see. And there's the old bracket with the rip through the side of it where the weld was. The one little spot that was holding it in place there, and the one little spot that was holding it in place there. Here's the new bracket from Barnes, 4-wheel drive. The bolts will fit through with no problem. Just there. So what we're going to do just to mock it up, is make sure this fits. And it looks like we're going to have to open this up a little bit just to make it fit. And then we'll be able to get that in there because this is a larger joint than the stock one, so it doesn't want to fit in there. So we're going to have to enlarge this and make it to where it will fit the new controller. So I'm going to do that and then come back. Okay, and I'm back now, so let's clean this off so we're not getting so greasy. I'll be oiling these two when I'm all done. Or not oiling them, but greasing them. Okay, and now this fits with no problem. We can get our bolt to go through with no problem. And our nut, flag nut, to go on here. And it's just the same stock flag nut that we used for on the stock one. We're not going to torque it down, but I just want to make it snug. So it's kind of where it needs to be, like that. Next we have this little hole here, and that's for the bolt on the back side of the axle that holds the bearings in place and the axle shaft in place. And you take an 18-inch socket, I'm sorry, not 18-inch, 18mm socket. It goes through that hole and onto the nut. Going the right way, just like that. And it does two things. It helps us line this up so that we can, one, get it in the right spot, which looks like with the track arm on it. I'm sorry, the control arm on it. We may have to make some adjustments, but it will sit something like that. And then we can pull that socket out when we're done and be able to remove that nut if we have to remove the axle shaft or anything in the future. This one that's right down in here. So we'll get that all straightened out on there, And then we will be ready to tack it in place once I get that in place. Also on the other side, which is the bump stop side, Barnes wants you to be 13/16 inches away from the bump stop according to their instructions. So we'll measure that out, get that proper distance. That's where they want it, right there. That comes off easily. You can't really move it or rotate it from there. The bolt doesn't come out from there though without taking that off. Right? So we have to take the bump stop off in order to get the bolt in and out. Which I guess keeps it from falling out too if we're off-roading, unless the bolt breaks. They're not used to having this additional bump stop here, so there would be additional 2 inches of space or so from the stock bump stop to this platform, and that's where we're running into this issue, which is what happens when you're doing custom work on a Jeep or any kind of vehicle that you've altered, but then you buy a bracket that's designed for a stock location. So it's all just a matter of trying to make things go together and work together and how to make them work. So I think we have this where it needs to go. We can get a socket in there so that we can get that bolt off. And then we'll have to remove this bump stop to verify that we can get this bolt in and out before we get too far along. And then, let's see, what is that, 17? And Allen. And then we can, you know, double check the arm and everything. And then the arm's gonna have to go back quite a bit actually. Or I'm gonna have to push the axle forward, because it may have adjusted or went forward or slid one way or the other when I jacked it up. So we may be okay with that. So we're gonna go ahead and shoot for that and see where we line up. We're the 13/16 off on the side over here, so we're okay. So let's get this bump stop removed and make sure that that bolt fits in there, and then we can see if we're ready to tack that in place. Okay, here we go to take off that bump stop. Can't really see it from here, but let's see. That's probably a better angle. We're going to remove this bump stop just to make sure that the bolt goes through, and we'll be good. Okay, well, the bump stop came off. It's a modular to set your distances, but it look like little hockey pucks. For those of you that are in hockey. Just gonna hold these together right here, just so I don't lose anything. Now let's see if our bolt will go through where it is to be able to get. Yeah, see, this whole bump stop's gonna have to come off, because the washer on the, here, we'll give you a better view. The washer on the bolt hits this bump stop, and this bracket's not going to move at the time once we get it welded, so it's going in at an angle until it gets past it, but it won't go past it because it's hitting this side. So this whole bump stop pad or perch will have to come off so that we can get a bolt in there and get everything lined up and then be able to bolt it and unbolt it. So we'll take that off next, and we will get a we'll take that off next, and then we can get our location so we can tack it in place, check everything, make sure everything looks good, then weld it in place and call it good. Put it all back together. Good. Okay, next we're going to remove this little bump stop perch, for lack of a better term, and okay, so there's the bolt for that, and then I can turn that away. Put that on the ground, don't lose it. I can turn that away. I can position this where I want it, which is going to be closer over here, about right there. That comes out with no problem. Now let's take the bolt, and can we get it in? There's that. All the way through. Take it out, yes. So that looks like it's going to be fine. Right there. Parking brake is good. It's got clearance on the bottom. And I think we're going to be okay over here. Let me show you the other side. So on this side, see right in here, here's the socket I'm talking about that goes on the bolt or the nut right through that hole, holds this kind of in place, so it kind of dictates where it's going to go. You can't really move it because that socket has to be able to come through there. So without that socket being there, you're not going to be able to get it to come through. So I think we're just going to measure 13/16 off of this side, which we're about there, and then make sure that we can get this out easily and tack it in place. So let's see where we're at. So coming off the edge of that, we are just right there. So there's 13/16 coming off the edge. So right where it is, as long as this socket will come out easily, and it does, we're going to go ahead and tack it right there and go from there. First off, I need to make sure that we have enough of the paint removed so I can weld. And there's some areas it looks like I'm going to need to sand some more paint off, like down in the bottom here and up in the top. So let me get my sander again. Alright, so there's a couple places that we need to get a little bit more paint taken off. So we're going to pop this bracket off, mainly right here at the top. Should do okay. So that's got steel, bare steel, bare steel, bare steel. Yeah, all the way around. So we should be good now for welding. And we have bare steel all the way around. I'm not sure if you can see that other side, but we do have bare steel all the way around. Now we're just going to measure that one more time for our location. there. Right there. It falls forward a little bit, so we're going to hold it back a little so it holds it in place. And we'll be ready to go. So now we're going to get ready for welding. I've got to find a ground that I can use. It's going to be a good ground. If not, I have to sand some more paint off somewhere, which I probably will do. And then I can just paint that over that. You know what? Actually, we're going to remove this the rest of the way. And I'll get back to you. Okay, now we have a good place to ground. I know it doesn't look like you can clamp something there, but we have a magnetic clamp for our ground. So this magnetic ground is pretty cool. I saw this on another video on YouTube. I'm sure there's a technical name for it, but I don't know what it is. So you put it where you want to have the bare metal, twist this until it stops, and now it's locked in place. And now it will give me the sufficient ground I need. And we can tack this in place. Good, good, good. That comes in off and on perfectly. Let's just double check before we go crazy and start tacking this in a bunch of places. We are at 13/16, right on that edge right there. Close enough for me. And let's see this side. Okay, good. A little tap. And that's a good tap in there. So now we can look and see where we're sitting as far as our axle goes. Okay, so I verified a couple things, mainly the length of the upper control arm, got all of that situated. I forgot to press record for that, but it's all taken care of. So when we finish the welding, we'll be able to just put that back together. And for now, we're going to go ahead and start welding this in place. So hopefully I do a good job. Let's see if we can get a good picture back here. Sorry, I have to move the camera around. I don't have a cameraman. Okay, so that looks all right. Willing to bet that the 18mm socket's not going to fit. But it's worth a shot. Oh yeah. It's hot, so I don't want to try it. So I'm just going to clean up all my tools, let this sit overnight to cool off, and we'll come back to it tomorrow and put it all back together. So we made some progress today, so that was good. Back at it today, and I went ahead and painted where I was using the ground on the bump stop, and I painted the bracket. So we are ready to start the reassembly. Now that I've painted everything and everything's ready to go, we're going to start with the control arm on the installation, since I can't get the bolt in here once the bump stop riser pad here or perch will be in the way. So we'll go ahead and get this in place first. And we're going to put the flag nut on it on the inside. Once we get that to come through, and let me get a wrench. All right, so we got a wrench here. Oops, flag nut fell off. Alright, so that's snug. Now we're going to torque it. And it gets torqued to 125 foot-pounds. See, we can start with 80. See if I can even get my torque wrench in there. There's 80. Looks like I was already at 80. And here's 125. All right, so there's 125 foot-pounds for the control arm. I'll grease those in a minute, just to put in new grease. And next we're going to put on the bump stop perch, which sit back like this, and takes a couple of these bolts. We're going to put Loctite on these, blue Loctite on these, so we don't have them come apart since they're not nylock nuts. And so we'll do that. Just put a little bit of blue Loctite on it. Hold that in place. One bolt. All right, that's in place. Next are our hockey pucks for the actual bump stop extensions. These are here because we put a rock crawler 3-inch lift kit on this Jeep, and that makes up a little bit of the space for bottoming out so we don't actually run our tire up into our fender. Okay, so that's those two things. We need to get this up out of the way, so we'll probably put a zip tie on that so he can not squish that like he looks like he did in his bump stop. So we'll probably put it something like that. It does have these little things here that I guess go on here that we can probably use. Maybe do this one. That'll give us a little bit of extension. There we go. And that gives us some extension here when he drops down. Okay, so we've got the control arm back tightened up. We have the bump stop back in place. The last thing we have to do before wrapping all this up is going to be putting the parking brake back in place. So now we're going to put the parking brake back in place. Try to get this cable out of my way temporarily. Get all the stuff on the right side and put it in. Let's see. Put this in there. This goes up through there. There. And that should be good. Now this parking brake should work. Should be good there. Should clear it. And with that, I believe that we've wrapped everything up. We're good to go. I'll put the tire back on it and we'll be down the road. Okay, we're all back together and ready for our test drive. Thanks for watching. We greatly appreciate it, and we will see you on the next one.